Maine, the state known for its breathtaking coastlines, fresh lobster, and Stephen King novels. But what if I told you that Maine also has a reputation for being low-key racist? Maine is one of the whitest states in the US, with over 90% of its population identifying as white. Some people argue that this lack of diversity results in a kind of casual racism, but is that fair? And is that even their fault? I went down this rabbit hole after watching this mapping video here that was simply talking about Maine having a larger border with Canada than any other state. But as I was reading through the usual comments about geography, I stumbled upon this comment that caught my attention. Maine is the most peaceful state. Is there something they don't have that every other state does that lends to this peace? And this user stated that everybody already knows the answer. But I didn't. At first I thought it was guns maybe, and I looked up gun ownership and it appears that Maine has an average amount of guns compared to other American states, and it was actually New Jersey with the least and Montana with the most. So I kept reading, and then I saw the debate about people saying that Maine is not racist and they can't help the fact that mostly white people settled there. It doesn't make us racist. But it quickly got challenged by G. Grimm, who stated that he lives in Maine and that racism breeds far north and that he loves Maine and it's the best state, but the racism is real. So before we get to the maps that I found, I did unearth some grisly stuff that stated that people of colour who live or visit Maine felt like outsiders because there were no other black people around. But this unsettledness of theirs, is that still Maine's fault? The visitors felt like they were treated differently, despite no white Maine person actually doing anything to them majorly. But is this true? I had to find that out. So here is the question. Can a place be racist simply because of its demographics? So I checked out Maine 2023's hate crime statistics and found that there were 24 race hate crimes in 2023 and decreasing. But this statistic means nothing without a comparison. So I compared Maine to a similar populated state, but one with about double the amount of black people and diversity than Maine, that being the state of Hawaii. And to my shock, Hawaii had fewer hate crimes than Maine despite more ethnic people. So does a lack of exposure to diversity create ignorance and therefore racism? I then wanted to find out what type of hate crimes we are talking about here. Are we talking about something like writing the N-word on a building? So I went to look at the American Justice Department's website and read some cases. This one shows a white male sentenced to 3 years for assaulting a black man at a bar, then attacked another black person causing serious bodily harm. A more recent one shows a white male pleading guilty to shouting racial slurs and threats to his black neighbour, so it looks like a mixture of crimes. So, to the maps that I found about Maine, and let's see if we can truly answer the question posed in the comment, that Maine, is it truly peaceful because it is low-key racist? This map shows that generally the Northeast has a lower property crime and violent crime than the rest of the USA. And Maine has a gun ownership rate of 22.6%, so 1 in 4 people. And on a list of safest places to retire, Maine comes in 6th, with most of its neighbours in the top 10 as well. So, fewer guns and lots of old people. That's what I'm interpreting so far. Next map, anxiety, worrying is not a pastime in Maine or its neighbour Vermont, but I can see why New Yorkers are worried. All that unwanted subway action and congestion pricing would have me worried too. And Maine's neighbours are giving off safe vibes too, with a 69% safeness level. Maine comes in at the 49th least diverse state within the USA, with its neighbours close behind, further insulating Maine, as this graph shows the white landscape across the vista. And then I found this map which helped, but didn't at the same time. This map shows how often citizens within that state type the N-word on social media, and it was no data for Maine unfortunately, but its neighbours were below the average, so that would probably include Maine. But this doesn't make sense. Why would a white person stupidly type the N-word on social media? This kind of map helps out New England as not being racist. And this map was interesting, that in the year 2064, it is predicted that Maine's whiteness will decrease to 84.8 as new migrants settle, but Maine will still be the most whitest state in America. And if we look at median income adjusted for cost of living, we can see that Maine isn't overly wealthy like DC, but somewhat comfortable and nowhere near the poorest southern states. So what I gather is that Maine has fewer guns, fewer violent crimes, old people who are unworried and financially comfortable, who don't type the N-word on social media, and have neighbouring states that are just as white as them. But does this make Maine's peacefulness a possibility because of no racial diversity? Or is it just a happy coincidence? So here's the thing, Maine has done nothing wrong. It's not like white Maine citizens pushed out people of colour. It's just that people of colour never settled there. And I'm okay with this. But I think it stinks that overall Maine's population is tarnished as racist because people of colour don't want to move there. But Maine is changing from the 90% to the 80% over the decades to come, but casual racism and hate crimes were higher than more diverse cities of the same size, so I guess there are things for Maine to work on.